Hi guys and welcome to the circus. So today we're going to be going over my overall experience in BRO standard in AO region 2021 or 2022 if you want to call it that way because it happened in 2022 but you get the point. Why am I bothering with this? Why? Why? In BRO standard, I only joined in AO format. I was planning on joining EU, but after AO, I was already a bit tired. And in AO, I was doing pretty well. So I was like, let's just continue and just see what I can get out of AO. And with that in mind, I ended up going through all 8 rounds of Swiss. And after 30 minutes or so, here comes EU, which in the end, I didn't have the mental capacity to join. I'm still not used to big events like this, even though it's only remote. And since I already did well in AO, I just thought that maybe the results I put in AO is enough for me. Also, I just want to enjoy the show at this point because I also want to watch the stream. Before I talk about my overall experience with BRO as well as my deck list, I would first like to give some shoutouts. First of all, my playtesting friends IRL, which are Kuya PJ, Kuya Linon, Yusha Sama, Kuya Kenneth, Kuya Josen, Tito Kai, Kuya Noe. Thank you guys for all the playtesting we did. Also, thank you so much for Different Fights Discord community. Special thanks to Dynamis, Dean, and Rika for playtesting with me. You guys are really fun to play with. And yeah, that's about it. So in the beginning, I was already fixated on bringing Baromagnes in both AO and EU. I registered in both AO and EU, but I ended up not checking in on EU because, as I said before, I was already drained. And in AO, we reached top 16, specifically top 11 out of all 200 plus players, which is amazing on my part. I was really surprised on how well I did and how well my deck performed throughout the entire Swiss. I ended up with a record of 6 wins, 2 loss. One loss I had was versus Bruce. Looking back on that match, there wasn't really that much I could do. He had all the pieces needed in order to survive my Goman Sonicer Keenly turn, which is the strongest combo in the deck. He had all the PGs available and all the hand cards, and I ended up just being rushed down by final rush turns. So that was my first loss, and the second loss I had was versus Bavsagra out of all things. He was also Filipino like me, and I was really glad I got to face him because I learned a lot throughout the match. His playstyle was very unique, the deck list was so unique, and basically I think I lost because of lack of matchup knowledge. I only saw how Bavsagra works but never got to experience playing against it, and the deck list was so unique and the playstyle of it kills Baromagnes. He also said after the game that he had a solid game plan against the deck, which takes advantage of my 15 soul turns, and basically in the end, he stalled the game out to the point where I decked out. Even though I had Keenly Rudely available, I also misplayed a bunch because again of lack of matchup knowledge. I did learn quite a lot, so thank you for the game if you're listening to this. He also ended up on top 8, which is the only Bavsagra in all 3 regions. So kudos to him, congrats to you dude. And also congrats to the one I lost to because he was, I think, at some point at the top of the bracket and obviously went up to top 8. So in the end, I was just honored that the 2 losses I had were both in top 8 and I'm really glad I did well. Sadly, I couldn't bubble into top 8. I ended up in 11th place. But in the end, top 16 is already an amazing achievement on my part. Of course, it could have gone better, but I still lack experience when it comes to these big events. And hopefully, I got to experience more in the future. In my Twitter, I already posted my deck list and as well as my overall matchups. In all 8 rounds of Swiss, I faced 2 Nirvanas, 2 Prison, 2 Bruce, 1 Clarissa, and 1 Bavsagra. And when it comes to my deck list, I was also planning on doing a deck profile for it, but it's almost the same as my previous deck profile for Baromagnes, the latest one for set 3. So instead of me making another deck profile for it as a whole, I'll just show you the deck list right here. So this is my deck list, and as you can see, it's pretty standard. There's not much to think about here. There's nothing like a spicy tech here. Maybe you can consider the one-off copy of Extraction here or Goman as my tech. Goman as of now is already a staple in Baro, unless a better version of it comes out. But it just synergizes well with Baromagnes, so not running this in your deck loses a lot of possible offense or possible finisher. But I think I saw a topping Baromagnes that didn't run Goman and instead just ran a bunch of other soul charging pieces, which is also viable because Goman is one of those cards along with Keenly Rudely that doesn't soul charge, which means that if you draw into them, it just slows down your soul charging, especially on turn 3 onwards. But it is just that good of a card to not run, I think, in my opinion. Also the one-off copy of Extraction because it acts like a 5th copy of Pandemonium Tactics, which is in my opinion the soul of the deck. It's the card that soul charges the most in the deck, so if you open up with one of them, it turns your soul into 10 and you need 5 5 more, which is relatively easy with Curtis, Engravers, and whatnot. The main difference here from my previous list is that I didn't run Spherical Splasher anymore. Instead, I ran 2 more copies of Spartan because I figured that you can only afford to run Spherical Splasher if you're going first. In my previous deck profiles, I talked about sticking with 10 soul in turn 3 is enough, but I realized then that it's only viable when you're going first. And you can't always go first with playing Baro. Eventually, you'll go second. And when going second, if you're sticking with 10 soul, it's gonna be a lot slower because then you're gonna be eating 2 grade 3 turns of your opponent. So when going second, you need to be mindful of that. So to make sure that I can still hit 15 regardless of going first or going second reliably, I decided on cutting it and then put in more Spartans. The new crit that has a skill is really clutch in this deck because it soul charges 1. The soul charge 1 is very crucial in the deck because you can reach 10 with Pandemonium, you can reach 14 with 2 Curtis, and you only need 1 more. So 1 more soul charge can be secured by 1 Engraver, 1 Assurda if you happen to guard early, but sometimes you won't proc Assurda, so you can just rely on the crits or Selfish Engraver. Taida as my starter because it's my first foil starter and it's my favorite starter as of now. And for the rest of the deck, it's pretty much the same as my previous list. If you want to check out the explanations for each card here, I'll leave it in the description for you guys to see. And yeah, this was my deck list. I'm really glad and honored that I got to experience one of Bushiroad's biggest events ever this year, next to BSFO, and also the upcoming BSFO this year. Funny enough, this was my very first official event, and personally, I am just really glad and honored that I got to play against the best of the best in the entire world. I got to meet some amazing people along the way. We got to talk about some of our experiences. One question I always ask to my opponent is, how many overtriggers did you see in the past few rounds? Speaking of overtriggers though, funny enough, throughout the entire 8 rounds of Swiss, I only got to see the overtriggers being checked offensively or defensively in the last 2 rounds of my Swiss. Honestly, it was a huge game changer because without the overtriggers in Factor, me and my opponent always got to express our skills. But you know, you gotta still try your best to play around it every now and then, especially when the game prolongs too much. You know, just play around it, bro, easy. I had some matches where I intentionally played around it to an extent. Thankfully, it didn't trigger, and thankfully, I didn't trigger my own. But overall, I think I was just really lucky that I didn't see an overtrigger in either of us being checked defensively or offensively until the last 2 rounds. So yeah, I think that's overall my experience in BRO 2021 Standard. So it's time for me to ask you guys, did you participate in the event? How well did you did? What deck did you bring? What was your most memorable moment there? How many regions did you participate in? Did you got streamed? Do share your stories in the comments, please, because I would really love to read them. Also, thank you so much again for everything. And if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Do all the wonderful YouTubey things. Together, let us raise the flag of Dark States, and I'll see you guys next time.